So, in this situation, we've agreed that there's a couple of things on the agenda. We've already discussed how they're going to tell the neighbours, or what they're going to tell the neighbours about the reasons for the divorce, which is quite an emotive thing. People worry about what people think. And we've also discussed the different ways of thinking about what the kids might need from their different mindsets and ways of looking at the world. And there's something else on the agenda that we'd like to bring up. And Sarah, you said there was something to do with your belongings.
Well, yeah, there is actually. Because I went back to the family home and just to go and collect my personal belongings and the china that I've got from my mum. And it was all bagged up in the garage, just slung in the corner. It was slung, Frank. It was absolutely slung in the corner. You'd gone through all my personal stuff, you hadn't thought about what I wanted, it was all about what you wanted. And I was absolutely furious.
Okay.
And I still am.
Okay. Okay. So Frank, let me get this right. So you put some belongings in the garage for Sarah?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. And what was the intention? What was the positive intention behind that?
Well, she was so vague about what she wanted, I just thought it would be easier to pick it up that way.
Okay. Okay. If we had had a little session on neutral words, I would have picked him up on saying that. She's so vague. It's not a neutral way of saying it, is it?
She's very vague.
That's a button pushing. That's a button pushing way of saying it. Okay. So what you were hoping to achieve was?
Well, so just turn up whenever was convenient to her and take what she needs.
Okay. So that was Frank's positive intention. He was trying to make it convenient for you, Sarah. Okay. What was the actual impact that it had?
Well, I was absolutely furious. That's why I kicked the garage door and left you a rude note.
That is spelled rude note.
Okay. So, Frank, was it your intention to make Sarah angry?
No, it wasn't. And I'm sorry about that. I was just trying to be helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
That's your drink?
Yeah, all right.
Still got it.
You're such a child.
Now, these are little snippets, but in real life, a situation similar to that, there were a number of things happened, there were lots of misunderstandings, and that very simple process of what was your positive intention, what was the actual impact, was that what you intended? No. Okay, I'm sorry. And then maybe asking them, well, with hindsight, how might you have done it differently? And then they start to learn new ways of checking assumptions before diving in. And in real life, a couple like that actually did end up not going for a drink, but going and having the first family meal out with the kids since they'd separated. So it really can diffuse a lot of the conflict. Another point I often make is that people are not their behaviour. If we can go into the next slide, please. So some of the things, just a few sort of little tips and techniques. I recommend taking the problem out of the person. So you use that with language, and you also use it by anchoring. You know, I'm saying, well, let's put the problem over here for a minute. You write the problems on one bit of paper, and you write the solutions on another. Talk about hot potatoes. Don't talk about issues, because issues are heavy and serious, and they stay with the person. Hot potatoes cool down. It's very subtle, but it can make a big difference. Because all we are, all the feelings and things get affected by language as well, the language that we use. So, another few tips is avoid language like never, always. What does that tell you? Coaches in the audience, if people say always and never, impossible. It's impossible. They're referring to something in the past, aren't they? They're interpreting the present based on something that's happened in the past. You always do such and such. Well, they're not actually listening in the present. If you also use the word they're generalising, you never do that. They're not really listening if you use those words. Fair is a dangerous word. I got that from some of the collaborative training notes I received. Because when you say something is fair, you have to justify it, don't you? If we were sharing a box of chocolates and there were 5 left, you'd have to work out, well, how many of you had? And how many of you had? Well, I think they belong to me. You've always got to look back to justify what's fair. And if it wasn't a box of chocolates, but it was something more important like your life, well, who decides what fair is? So instead of that, it might be better to say, well, actually, who really wants the remaining chocolates? And who would prefer the ice cream? And to me, collaborative is working on the solutions, it's working on the future, and finding ways to help them move forward. Can you move to the next slide, please? I'm whizzing through, we could talk for hours. When performing the specific role of a collaborative coach, as opposed to another type of coach, there are some specific principles to follow. The first one, which I think is the most important one, is that you're operating for the team, not the individual. That takes a lot to get your head round, especially if you've had a therapeutic training, and client confidentiality and working for client is the key. You've got to step outside of that. You have to have a bigger perspective, and yet you still have to be sympathetic and empathetic and build rapport with the clients. You have to be able to communicate what's going on. In the situation I had where we'd had a 3-way meeting, and the wife was particularly upset. I mean, not emotional, but she was angry, she was annoyed, there were lots of things, and unusually difficult. The next day I got a phone call, and she was in tears on the phone. She'd had a counselling session that day, and she said, I've just realised why I was so upset yesterday. And she said, I'd always imagined we'd have a big family, and it suddenly dawned on me that I'm of the age I'm not likely to meet somebody else and have more kids in the next 6 months, a year. And even though she was ready for the divorce, she was well ready for that, she was beginning a new loss adjustment cycle for loss of the dream of not having the big family. Now, that was useful to know because it explained her behaviour. She wasn't deliberately being difficult. So it was appropriate to share that with the collaborative team, but to do it in a sensitive way. So I might say to her, I think it would be a good idea to let your lawyer know, or maybe we feed that back. And what we might do is we might say, she's going over this, she's going over the grieving of a dream, but she's dealing with it. We don't need to say what it is. So you get the idea. Okay, we've talked about focusing on the aspirations, solutions. It's the client's agenda. They decide what you want on the agenda. And the pace, with collaborative, it's recommended that you go at the pace of the slowest person. One of them might have decided 2 years ago they want a divorce, and the other one only finds out 2 months ago. So they're at different paces. And you have to manage that and help the other one understand, because they've forgotten what it was like 2 years ago. You have to help them understand. And if you push people who are not ready, they'll push back. And I bet that's what you see in court situations. Okay. The other difference between a coach or a therapist working within the collaborative team is you're not working therapeutically, and you're only working with them for the duration of the collaborative process. You're not there to hold their hand off into the horizon. Now the reason for that is if they ever want to come back round the team, perhaps they argue over something to do with the kids later on, then you're still there as a neutral coach to help them. So it is a few sort of different ways of working. Next slide, please. It's not just the coaches that need to shift how they're thinking. Everybody involved has to get their heads around, instead of being positional, acting for all of the team. On the training I had, I thought it was a great analogy. Lawyers who are working traditionally sometimes are like the knights in shining armour. You're there to protect your client and look after them and get the best you can for them. Whereas in a collaborative approach, you're working really for both of them and their overall aims. And when they establish these aspirations for what they want, these anchor statements, that becomes almost like the guiding post. It becomes the lighthouse that all the professionals are referring back to as we go through the journey. And it's a journey. They're going from husband and wife to finding a way to work in partnership, perhaps co-parenting, a more business-like relationship. Transparent communication. I just Colin wanted me to make the point that lawyers, you can still have, of course, these private conversations with your clients. But if there's a lot of private conversations, then it really sabotages the spirit of collaborative practice. And as a coach, some of the agreements that you use, they actually say, if your client doesn't agree to you communicating with the team, then that's grounds for you sacking yourself from the process because it's not tenable. Another shift, and I used to be an independent financial advisor, so I can get this for myself. You're no longer giving advice. You're not acting as a specialist in a way because you're helping the couple to come up with the solutions that will work for them. Yes, you put your specialist advisor's hat back on when it comes to implementing the legal stuff. So there's a few shifts. I like to make a difference. That's what I do. I can and do act as a coach outside of the collaborative process. But I find that for me, I think I can make more difference working inside it. Because it's only when I'm inside it can I see the kind of communication dynamics that are going on. And if we can help them understand and work problems out now, then they're going to have a much rosier future. Another reason I like it is that I did some research myself a few years ago, and I found that people find the divorce process the most stressful bit. This is in general, not collaborative. It's the divorce process. And when we're dealing with things which are outside our control and which are affecting us, that is one of the most stressful situations we can find ourselves in. So it's no wonder collaborative is great at reducing the stress. It puts the clients back in control. It allows them to negotiate and express what's important to them. And then the lawyers can help them implement the solutions that will work for them. Next slide, please, Zoe. So that's why I like collaborative. I'm going to hand over to Carol now, who's going to say why she does and why we think it's great for clients.